Okay guys, I just wanted to do a quick video talking about my P10C and some upgrades and tabletop talk about this P10C and what I've done to my P10C. We may include some IDPA footage of me shooting this gun. I have, since we shot the IDPA match a few months ago on this gun, I've done a few upgrades. Not too much, but I'll kind of let you know what's changed since that match. And it had been a while since I shot the gun. I do carry this gun quite often, but I don't carry it most of the time. So every once in a while, several times a year, I do carry this gun. But it had been a while since I shot it when I shot the match, and I had shot guns with better triggers that were heavier. So it took me a minute to adjust to the gun, but you'll see in the footage that the gun can be extremely accurate. And although there is some little things I can do that's actually going to improve the gun, and I've got some upgrades in the works we'll talk about, and I may do a video after this talking about the upgrades that I do in the future, or that should be on the way. So let's go over the pistol real quick. This right here is a Olight PL Mini. I think this is a first gen. This was before the 2 came out. The 2's a little shorter, the PL Mini 2. This is the PL Mini 1. It's kind of very flat. It doesn't really make the overall pistol bulky. Personally, I'm running this temporarily, this 2-port comp. But if I was going to run this 2-port comp, I would have a full-size lot on it that comes all the way out. I think that would be the way to go with this setup if I was to run this comp all the time. And I'll tell you why I'm not going to run this comp too much longer. I do also have a short 1-chamber comp that I do run with this setup, and I have in the past, but I probably won't in the future because, like I said, we're fixing to talk about some upgrades. This one had a Gen 1 507C. This was an early Gen P10C. Had some work done to it. This was one of the first, I guess the first couple batches of P10Cs made and brought to the United States. So I did have an early model. We had some little issues that we had to work through and get past on this gun initially, but we've pretty much worked out all the problems on that. Let's talk about some of the upgrades I've done. Jaegerworks, or Jaegerworks, I don't know how you pronounce it, has done milling work on the slide, cut a window, cut serrations on the top. They also did my red dot cut. This is not an optic ready version of this gun. This was initially earn sights only, and they cut a real deep red dot cut. You can see how deep that is. It's very nice. But I had a Gen 1 Hollow Sun dot that was really, really early because I bought it right when I bought the gun, and the 507C had just come out, and I had heard a lot of them had problems, and I was a little worried early on that this one would have problems. However, it lasted for several years up until like the last few months. So about 4 or 5 years it did fine, and I noticed the last 2 or 3 months, or even after I shot the match, I went out to re-sight it and do some things to it, and the dot would just flicker off just randomly. And the battery, I changed the battery for a new battery, and I think I even tried 2 new batteries, and it still continued to just flicker on and off sometimes. And it was like every time I really needed it, it was there, but that kind of made me nervous considering I do carry the pistol. So I called Hollow Sun, called them, and sent in an email request. They gave me a shipping label, sent this back, and within a week or 2, I had a brand new X2 model with the side battery tray. So good on Hollow Sun. I mean, I can't say enough about Hollow Sun. Everything that I've got of Hollow Sun's. I'm not saying, you know, I did have a problem with this one. This was a very early model. The last dot that was on this was a very early model. It was the serial number was really low, so I know it was one of their first dots. And I kind of expected that it might have a problem in the future, and it did. But they made good on it, and every other dot, I've got like 6 or 7 Hollow Sun dots, and they've been wonderful. And I love the circle. In competition, I shoot the circle reticle, and there's not many optics that offer the circle reticle, and most people would say you're crazy. But when it comes to competition, it comes to speed and finding and acquiring the dot quickly, boy, that circle it really stands out, and it really allows me to see the area on the target that I'm shooting at. So I really like the circle reticle, So I like the multi-reticle systems on the Holosuns, and there's a few red dots that offer these multi-reticle systesun, but Holosun has done it first, and I think they kind of do it the best. So I really like that. We got Dawson Precision sights that we added to the gun. These are not factory sights. They're a little bit higher, so they co-witness with the dot, so that's good for carry. The trigger is HB Industries, I think, is who makes that, and it's one of their first gen triggers for the P10C. I've done several things. The Striker is aftermarket. It's a little bit tougher because I heard there was some strikers breaking in these early models, so I went ahead and replaced it with a CNC'd striker instead of the metal injected molded strikers I think they make with these P10Cs, and I think they've gotten a lot better at making them, so they're a lot stronger now. But I've got an aftermarket nicer striker, so I just don't have to worry about that issue. Going on to the trigger, we'll keep talking about the trigger. I've done several upgrades to the trigger. I've not really done much in the way of springs. I think I changed a few springs on the trigger, but just slightly. It's still very reliable in its function. I also added a trigger stop. It's basically a trigger stop screw, because I noticed for some reason on this gun, and by the way, I did check to see it was empty before I did the video, so for all you YouTube safety Nazis, yeah, I did several things to the trigger, and one thing I noticed when I was shooting the gun, for some reason, this had a little over travel after the shot would break. And when in my dry fire, when I was dry firing, and even when I was shooting the pistol, for some reason, it was like the gun would torque. As soon as the trigger would break, the gun would kind of torque a little bit. And I noticed this trigger over travel. The trigger over travel was like torquing the gun. Even if I pulled softly and smoothly, I felt like it was just barely torquing and twitching the gun. And so when I would dry fire, the dot would move. The dot would move every time I would dry fire. And I've dry fired a ton of guns in practice and shot a bunch of guns in matches. And this is one of the few guns that would do that. Glocks tend to do that a little bit with me as well. But this is one gun that kind of does that for me too, and I didn't really like that. Now I think the trigger factory and as is better than a factory Glock by far, and this trigger as it is actually better than most upgraded triggers for the Glock. The Timney triggers might have a slight edge on this trigger setup. However, it would be hard to take anything but the Timney trigger and beat this trigger as it sets up right here, as it's set up right here. Very good. But I actually Loctited and tapped in a screw here into the polymer behind the trigger as a trigger stop. And I've had it on there for 3 years. It's not had no issues. It's not moved. It has 98% fixed the problem where I feel like when I pull the trigger, the gun twitches a little bit. It's got rid of that little torquing issue that I had. And it just, it makes dry fire a lot more enjoyable when you pull the trigger and you're not seeing the red dot jump. When you see that red dot jump, you almost want to just sell the gun. I just don't like that. I don't like that at all. Especially having so many nice guns with red dots and being able to dry fire so many guns without having that little twitch involved in my dry fire training. But that fixed the problem. So I've done a little bit of sanding and polishing on the mag release. This is the first gen, so it's on both sides. It's not reversible. It's on both sides. Some people say the first gen guns are unreliable and have issues, but the reality of it is unless you force the issues on these guns, they don't really have an issue. There's no reliability issues besides if you're trying to force the gun to have a problem, it may. So CZ has since fixed some of those problems because they were being mentioned on the internet. However, I talked to a CZ representative and they said none of the guns in the real world were having any problems on the first gen guns. It was just a problem that the internet had created and they had to address them because they were people were false advertising problems with the CZ first gen guns. One of them was the striker rotation with this little thing. That was not a real issue. I've shot thousands of rounds through this gun. I've never had the striker rotate and cause this thing to lock up, the striker to lock up on the back of the slide. And you'll see some old videos, internet videos, where people force the striker over and they're like, look what can happen. Well, it don't happen in the real world. That's not the way the physics work on this gun. It just does not happen. You have to force it over to do that. It doesn't happen in the real world. And if it has, it's 1 in a million. CZ said they've never had a problem with it. So anyway, this gun has been very reliable. I had a little bit of reliability issues in the match, and I'll tell you why. I always like to do some gunsmithing work, and I'm going to tell you why I had some reliability issues. The slide release, when I first got it, was extremely hard to actuate to get the slide to drop. And I'm not one that likes to come over the gun and slap it back to drop the slide. I know a lot of people teach that, but I do not like it, and to me it's not practical. So I like to use a slide release on all my guns, 1911s or any other gun. I just like the slide release. It's just faster and easier in my opinion. Okay, so what I did to fix the issue is, not long before I went and shot the match with this gun, and I kind of wanted to fix this issue before I shot a match. The slide release bar that kind of catches on the slide itself is very sharp. The edge was very sharp, and that was causing the metal to dig into the slide, and so when you tried to drop it, it was extremely stiff. Okay, extremely stiff. But I took and rounded that edge and with a Dremel just slightly. There's plenty of metal there, so I wasn't worried about messing it up. I wasn't going to break the part or anything or mess the part up by taking a smoothing out an edge on it. And it's something, if you have the same problem, you can do this with the CZ as well. But in the process of doing that, I cleaned the gun after I got done. However, I did not clean down in the stuff, and there was some of that metal and the oils that was in my gun that had seeped down into my reset mechanism in the back, in the trigger pack, where it allows the gun to reset. Some of that metal shards had got down in those channels, and what it caused the gun to do is when I fire, the reset mechanism was not working quick enough, so the gun would have a dead trigger, and that happened twice in the match, 2 or 3 times in the match. It was no big deal. I just racked the gun and go on, and it kept going. Okay. However, when I got back, I was like, I have to fix this. So I went in there and actually noticed that part was extremely sluggish, and I knew it was my fault. I was like, man, I messed that up. I really caused those little issues in the match, and I caused this gun that's super reliable to be unreliable. And it was all my fault. I knew it from the start, and corrected that by taking all the little parts out of the trigger pack and cleaning those. So we fixed that problem rather quickly in about an hour of getting this gun really cleaned up and real deep cleaning on the inside of the gun. Okay, so another aftermarket part that I've added to this gun, I think this is a primary machine barrel threaded. This was just a standard barrel. And so that's one reason why I'm running the comp. I can run it suppressed if I want to. Works really good suppressed. I have the factory barrel, and the upgrade I was talking about earlier, and how I'm probably going to run this gun for sure all the time, is I have a ported barrel. The factory barrel's being ported. So I'm going to have a 5-port chambered barrel, factory, so it's going to be flush here. So it'll look real good with this flashlight. I may get me a bigger flashlight so I can run it this way if I want, like kind of like a rolling special, or I can run it ported with this light and be more compact and carry it, and that'll be, I think, awesome to carry. We've got, and I'll update you on the videos when I get those done on the porting barrel. I'll give you an update on this pistol and how it's running. We have a magwell. I think it's Anarchy Outdoors. I think it makes this magwell. it works okay. I wouldn't say it's the best mag wheel in the world, but it is pretty good for the price. There's a little issue I have with it is right here in the front. There's a little bevel, and it just doesn't work as good as like most race gun type mag wheels. It's a very large mag wheel, but because of that lip, you can sometimes have the mag catch on it. I may eventually go in there and smooth it out a little bit more. I'm not sure yet. I just don't want, the mag wheel's pretty thin aluminum, and I don't want to hurt its integrity and its strength by cutting in too much. Now I have flared it out a little bit on the polymer to kind of meet up with the mag wheel a little better. However, I don't want to do too much, so I'm kind of debating whether I want to do more there. If you throw the mag in through the back of the mag wheel, it goes in really, really smooth. So if you kind of hit the back and then go in, no problem. But if you hit the front, if you hit it hard enough, it's probably going to go past it. But if you hit the front kind of soft, it's going to kind of stick a little bit right there. Okay, so there's that. But I do like the mag wheel. I think it was worth the price. Is it perfect? No, but it's close. The grip, I did not like the factory stippling. A lot of people say good things about it. It was too aggressive in the wrong way. I like really aggressive, but it wasn't aggressive in enough places, and it was too aggressive where it was aggressive, if that makes sense, where it was at. Yeah, I guess it's kind of the only way I can really explain it. So I did my sunburst stippling job that I did, and it turned out really great. This is actually one of my favorite stippling jobs that I've done. I really like the look of it, and it grips really good. It has a lot of traction to it, but yet it doesn't hurt. You can even carry this gun appendix and it still doesn't hurt. It just don't have that real abrasive feeling, but it has a ton of texture and ton of grip to it. And it looks really good. I mean, I can't say enough good things about that, especially being free, and I did it for free myself, okay? So I really do like that part of this gun. So I smoothed out, like I said, I smoothed out the mag release. I smoothed out the slide stop to where it drops really free and really easy. I have an aftermarket recoil guide rod and aftermarket spring. I lightened the spring a few pounds so it works better with the comp. This comp was unreliable on this gun originally with the original spring. As the spring broke in, it kind of became reliable, but I still noticed my ejection wasn't quite strong enough, so I have added that lighter spring, and that'll work good when I get my ported barrel in, because I'll need this lighter spring to make it reliable. Okay, so that's good to go. That spring's the perfect weight for this comp, and I'm sure it'll be just right for the ported barrel as well. All right, I think it's 11 pound spring that I put in there with the stainless steel guide rod. It is uncaptured, by the way. All right, I think that covers pretty much everything. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. And this video has turned out to be quite a bit longer than I expected. I'm sorry about that. But please like and subscribe if you like these videos. This is one of my favorite guns, even though it is a first gen. I'm sure people will have comments about that. I love it. I love the way it is. There's so many different things and configurations I could run this gun in, I guess, that I just really like how practical it is. It's fairly lightweight, especially with the slide being milled. It really took a lot of weight out of it. It has a good balance. The frame fit and feel and sound is just better than a Glock. It's a whole lot better and smoother than a Glock. I really like that. Glocks are just kind of clunky and I don't know, mushy in the way that their slides work. However, a Zev or Shadow Systems kind of fix that problem if you get a little nicer, higher end Glock. But this just tends to be a little tighter, a little smoother than action than the Glock is. If you've never shot a P10C, find one at a range somewhere, indoor range, and see if you can rent it and shoot it. And it may not be like this one, of course, but you know, you may get a taste of what it's like to shoot a P10. They have good triggers. This is an early gun. I think the triggers may be better today than they were in this one. But with all the aftermarket stuff I've done, this trigger's turned out really perfect, especially for, it breaks right around 4 pounds, by the way. Let me show you that real quick. Here's the break, right around 4 pounds. Very smooth, no mush. There's a reset, pushes your finger out nice and smooth. Short reset. I mean, there's no mush. It's kind of like a rolling trigger, but there's absolutely no mushiness or kind of slack. It just rolls right through. Very nice, very smooth. Like I said, right at around 4 pounds, maybe a little less sometimes than 4 pounds, maybe 3.5 to 4 pounds. All right, guys. If you have any questions or comments, please write them or ask them down below. And please like and subscribe to this video. It really helps me get these videos out to you and encourages me to keep going. Thanks, guys. Have a blessed day.